Hi guys, this video I'll be talking about the VLAN trunking protocol. So we have three switches. All the links between the switches, I'll configure them as static 802.1q trunks. And then the second thing will be to ensure that switch 1 is elected as the root bridge for all the VLANs. And thirdly, I'll proceed with the configuration of the VLAN trunking protocol. Switch 2 will be configured as the server. Switch 3 will be configured as the client, and switch 1 will be configured in the transparent mode. I'll speak a bit about that later on, and then we'll basically just do the verification by checking that the VLANs have been all the VLANs have been propagated throughout the VTP domain. So let's start with the configuration. So proceeding with switch 1. Well, so just configuring the trunks on the three switches. Right, finally on switch 3. Just for verification. Right, the trunks have been configured on all three switches. So on switch 3, we've configured all the interfaces connecting to switch 1 and switch 2, Ethernet 0.0 to Ethernet 0.3 as static 802.1q trunks. The second thing is to ensure that switch 1 is elected as the root bridge. So let's configure that now. So the command for that is spanning tree VLAN 1-1001 priority 0. So what we're doing here is we're just setting the priority of the bridge to 0 in spanning tree, because the default priority is in spanning tree is 32,769, and the lower priority wins. So if the priorities are equal, then spanning tree looks at the MAC addresses. So but we are basically, if we set the priority to 0, we're ensuring that the switch 1 will be elected as the root bridge. So we've done that. So now we can proceed with the configuration of VLAN trunking protocol. So like I said earlier, switch 2 will be configured as server, switch 3 will be configured as client, and switch 1 will be in transparent mode. So let's start with the server. So the domain, we're setting it as CCIE, and the version, version as 2, and finally we set it as the server. I mean, that's the default, but we set it. I'll just type the command out. So let's just see, what do we have. So the command to check the VTP state is show VTP status. We can see that the VTP version is 2, the domain is CCIE, and the mode is server. So we also need to set the password. So the command we use for that is just VTP password, and the password we're setting is CCIE123. And we have to add some VLANs as well. So the VLANs will be adding 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. So let's do that on the server. Well, the VLANs have been added. So let's configure switch 3 now. Well, the version and the domain have been propagated by VTP, the VLAN trunking protocol. The server is the default. So we just configure the mode as client. Right, so the version is 2, domain is CCIE, the mode is client. So we have just to configure the password now. CCIE123. Right, so let's just configure now the switch 1, which is going to be in the transparent mode, and then we can just check on the client switch 3 whether the VLANs have been propagated. So let's do that now. Right, so the thing about transparent mode is it just relays the VTP adverts. So it doesn't update its own VLAN database. It just forwards them as long as the domain name matches. So it's going to receive the VTP updates and it will just forward them. It's not going to update its own database or anything like that. So we need to configure the VLANs on switch 1 as well. So let's do that. So 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. So let's just check in the VLANs have been added. They have show VTP status. Right, the version is fine, the domain name is fine, operating in transparent mode, and configuration revision 0 confirms that the VLAN database won't be updated. It's just going to forward the VLAN VTP adverts. So now switch 2 is the server, so we configured all the VLANs ourselves. Switch 3 should have updated the VLAN, should have received the VLANs by now, because on the client you can't add the VLANs yourself. So let's just have a look. Show VLAN brief. There we are, we have all the VLANs that we created on the server. So the VLANs are there. One thing we need to check now, you can see the VLANs have been propagated. On the server we had to configure the VLANs ourselves. Switch 1 we had to do the same because it's in transparent mode, so it's not going to get it's not going to update its own VLAN database. So we had to do that. Switch 3 being client, you can't add the VLAN, so the only way it's going to update its VLAN database is by receiving the updates from switch 2. and it added the VLANs from that. So now we can just check whether the switch 1 is the root bridge for all the VLANs, and that's pretty much the last thing we need to check. So show spanning tree summary. And we can see that the switch 1 is the root bridge for VLAN 1, 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100. So that was the second requirement in this exercise. So just to recap, guys, just a bit about the VLAN trunking protocol. So we configured all the links between the three switches as static 802.1q trunks. Then we ensure that the switch 1 is the root bridge for all the VLANs, and I showed you the command for that. So the command was just spanning tree VLAN, the range of the VLANs, priority, set it to 0. That should ensure that the switch 1 remains a root bridge, not just at the moment, but even in future. If you need to add any more VLANs, switch 1 will still remain the root bridge. And then finally, we just proceeded with the configuration of the VLAN trunking protocol. Switch 2 was set as the server, switch 3 was the client, switch 1 as the transparent one. So in the transparent mode, the switch doesn't update its own VLAN database. It just forwards the VTP adverts that it receives from other switches, i.e. in this case switch 2, as long as the VTP domain name matches. And we also set the VTP password on the 3 switches. And finally, we just checked on the client whether the VLANs were being propagated in the domain. And that's pretty much it, guys. So any questions, comments, post them below, and I'll answer as many as I can. Thanks.